Here we go. Delighted to say I am joined on the line by Constance Keane, who is not only based over in London, but is also an exceptionally busy artist. She's about to launch her new album under the name of Fierce on May the 7th. It's called Oíche. On top of that, she's got her own label on the go as well, and a side project too by the name of Whale. There is so much to talk about. Constance, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Like I had, this is actually a where to begin moment because like I mentioned, you've got fingers in so many pies at the moment. But I guess we'll start with the
Yeah.
most important aspect of all this because it's the one that's drawing closest to us. Is the album Oíche. Like it's brilliant. Like it's
Thank you.
very good as the
Thank you
man
so
says.
much.
Really enjoyed it. It's
I
one.
love I love your taste of the music that you play on your show. So that is actually like such a massive compliment. I really,
Oh,
really
thank you.
appreciate that.
You're very kind. This is a compliment back and forth. I'm enjoying this. I'm not used to it. I'm going to push. But no, the album is fantastic. I just want to know where the genesis of it was, I guess, and how you put it all together. Was it just yourself involved? Because it sounds, very much like a solo head down project. Is that the case, or am I way off?
Yeah, I did all of the recording and the production and everything on it up until last summer. And a friend of mine over here called Katie O'Neill, she did some engineering for vocal recording on two of the tracks. And that was my first time letting anybody into it. And that was about what, like 5 years into the recording process. So it was something I had guarded like really, really close to me the entire time. And the experience of letting somebody else in was terrifying, but actually really worthwhile afterwards. I felt really safe with her. I had a massive cry on the couch in the studio about how the album's really bad and no one's gonna like it. And it was actually nice to have that cry and have somebody there. I think she was like, hang on a second, and went outside and came back in and handed me a Kit Kat. And I was
Some
like,
sugar. Yeah.
great, that's perfect. So yeah, up until then though, it was totally me. I self-produce all of it. The only thing I get somebody else to do is master it.
Right. That's a big call to kind of let somebody in on what is, essentially a solo project and in lyrical terms as well is a very, very personal one too, because, you're touching on a lot of subjects that are, they're not just moon and June and lovey-dovey stuff. There's a
It's
lot of,
definitely not.
no, there's a lot of personal stuff on there. There's a lot of deep stuff on there. And
Yeah.
to go from that being a very insular thing to opening up and allowing somebody to be the first judge of it. Essentially, they're the first member of the public to kind of go, that works, that doesn't work, and they actually have a say in it. That's a big thing for an
It
artist.
is. It was a really big thing, and I mean, Katie is responsible for a lot of artists that I really love, kind of like breaking through. Like she found the XX on MySpace and stuff back in the
Wow.
day. So her judgment is something I really, really value, and the level of fear I felt before playing the album for her was like, it was so bad. But she's just somebody that's so comfortable to be around, and it just felt like hanging out with a friend more than anything. We had been on like a women's football team before, so we were used to kind of being playful with each other, and then also having those moments of like, when you need to give encouragement to somebody and have kind of that moment of like real talk. And she knew how big a deal it was as well for me to have somebody else come into it, and she was just so respectful of it. It was really wonderful.
That acts as a buffer, I imagine, as well for you to put the album out there too, because it kind of takes an element. There's still going to be that element there, but it takes away an element of the fear you'd have or just the trepidation of putting anything out into the wider world once you've had somebody who you trust give that stamp of approval to it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm at the stage now where I'm like sending the record to my friends. And that is so much scarier than sending it to journalists or anything like that. I think um, I find it easier actually to share stuff with people I don't know. It's more scary to play a gig to your mates than it is to play a gig to like 500 people that you've no idea who they are.
Yeah.
I don't worry about the judgment from people I don't know, I
Yeah.
guess, in general. I care a lot more about the people closer to me. And I think also because the work is so personal and so much of my work is inspired by the people around me rather than like inspired by other artists and stuff. Um, to have their seal of approval is also really important on it, because it's important for me to feel like they feel respected
Mm.
as well, especially when it comes to like the visual aspects. Like I will always clear everything by everyone involved beforehand. because it's not just me that's in the stuff.
Yeah. In terms of not just you being in stuff, like, but it is your very personal experience. As mentioned, there's a massive mental health thread throughout the album. I think it's fair to say there's tracks like Vines and Dent and stuff like that kind of stick out to me on that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm trying to find the right way to word this. Commend is probably the wrong way to do it, but it's not matter of fact, but it's a very laying on the table. This is my experience of this, and this is how I went through it. It's not there's no woe is me. There's no, I guess, kind of really overwrought kind of sense to the album or what was dealt with in those lyrics. There's a very, sensible, calm laying on the table. This is what I've gone through. Is that fair to say?
I'm really glad you get that from that, because that's kind of my outlook on a lot of the stuff that has happened to me. Ignore the London siren in the background. I'll just wait for it. There we go. For me, when I look back on things that have happened to me, there's times when I find it really upsetting, and there's times when you kind of mentally go back into that space. But I don't know if it's because I've just done so much therapy and so much work throughout the entire thing that I am able to talk about it in a way that I feel like it doesn't define me. Like it was a thing that happened to me, and it's something that I still deal with, like, day to day. Like I'm still on meds and everything. But I don't feel like it is like the measure of me as a person either. I think a lot of the reason that the album took so long for me to make, as I said, I was working on it for over 5 years, is because I had to make sure that I was at a place with the subject matter where I felt like I can put it out into the world and not worry about how people perceive it or how they're going to judge me as a person based off it. Because it's all well and good to like share your experiences and things, but I think you do have to be kind of mindful when you're doing it about very sensitive stuff. I mean, like loads of the songs on this record are based around like a very abusive relationship I was in, and talking about that stuff in public is really terrifying. And you feel very vulnerable a lot of the time when you're doing it. And I had to make sure that I was in a place where I had processed enough of what happened to me for me to be able to put it out there and not go, oh my God, but what if that person that I went to school with actually hears this and then they know blah, blah, blah. It has been a whole kind of road for me to get to the point where I'm at now with I have no issues talking about that stuff now at all.
Well, congratulations on getting to the point where you're at now. And the thing about the album is that the people who do connect with it are going to connect with it on a pretty deep level because of the subject matter that it deals with. So you're going to have people who are very, very close to this record, I think, within the first couple of listens.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, one of the tracks was I ended up doing like inpatient treatment for 6 weeks in a psychiatric hospital in Dublin, and the opening track of the record was written and recorded in the music room there, like while I was there. And a lot of the recording throughout the record is done at the time that I'm writing it. I don't tend to demo my music and then go back and then re-record it. It almost works like a scrapbook. There might be little bits that I tweak or add on afterwards, but there's always like this kind of baseline level of what I created at the time I was feeling the thing. And it was really important for me to like open up the album with that song, because that I feel like I have proven myself in the song wrong. Because it was written at a time where I didn't think I would still be alive to release the song or anything like that. It was just a moment of pure creation. It was not making anything for any kind of purpose. And when I listen to it now, I mean, I listen to the lyrics and I'm like, Jesus, you were an idiot. But at the same time, I'm like so glad that I was wrong. And I find that very empowering. Like I do find talking about this stuff really empowering, and I find it's a way of connecting with people on a very real level as well.
It's a very different time and a very different world that we're living in now to when you started the record. And imagine you had a vision for it to a degree, or at least how it would be put out and what you would do with it and how you would maybe perform elements of it or whatever beyond this. It's a very strange time to be releasing an album, I'd imagine. How are you feeling about it?
It's a bit weird, not gonna lie. I kind of started gearing up for, drawing a line under the recording process and stuff early last summer. when we were obviously we were in the pandemic at that point. I thought that, releasing it maybe early 2021 would be a feasible thing to do, because obviously none of us knew that this was going to happen, except for the scientists that were definitely telling us this was going to go on for this long. I think I just kind of decided that it was important that I do it anyway.
Yeah.
I think I enjoy the challenge of finding new ways to connect with people anyway. And a lot of the music that I've been listening to when I'm having a hard time in the pandemic or feeling very disconnected or very isolated is, kind of sad, reflective music. So if somebody listens to it in this type of a setting, well, then maybe that's actually the time that it's most accessible for people as well. I think people have done a lot of reflection as well over the past year.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Sure, just a tad.
What else is there to do? It's like once you've finished several seasons of whatever you're having yourself on Netflix,
stare at the ceiling
and go, what has my life been up until this point?
Yeah.
But you've because you've got agency over this whole thing as well, because you've got the label too that you're putting out. And this isn't just going to be yourself, it's going to be other artists, I imagine, too.
Yeah, so I started a label called Tool last August. It was actually from those recording sessions with my friend Katie, where we were trying to brainstorm ideas for labels that were owned by women. It was really important to me that it was put out on a label that was owned by women. Unfortunately, the music industry is still very skewed towards men in powerful positions, predominantly white straight cis men. And to do with the subject matter that I was writing about, I just felt like I would be most comfortable working with a label run and owned by women, and then also like women PRs as well. And I'd been talking to Katie about it, and we were trying to brainstorm ideas, and she was just like, I think you should put it out yourself. And I kept just saying no, because I don't know how to do that, and all the other excuses that we come up with. And she was just like, no, I think that you actually should do it. I think you can do it. Just like sit with it for a bit. And yeah, I had been talking to like so many amazing women at a number of different labels I'd worked with over here about this whole idea of just wanting to create like another option for people, I guess. I don't particularly think that what we're going to do is going to, change everything in the music industry from the ground up. But all I want is to create a space where people have an alternative, and basically make the thing that I wanted to do. So I started it with my friend Emily Kendrick, who works at XL Recordings.
Yeah.
And yeah, we decided to start it last August, just before I moved back to Dublin for a few months due to unemployment. And yeah, we had an ice cream and sat in a park, and we're like, let's do a label.
Good way to found a label is to have an ice cream and sit in the park and discuss it all.
Yeah, it was great, actually. It was really nice.
I'd imagine their experience with XL as well would have helped immensely too.
Yeah, totally. So I used to work at Young Turks, and Young Turks and XL are linked. And she's worked at XL for like 10 years. She's the like the overall project manager for the whole label. So she just has so much knowledge.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Well, even yourself working at a label previously, you kind of get an aspect of what to do and what not to do and what's worked and what hasn't before.
I guess I definitely what I really got was knowing what I would want as an artist and what I wouldn't want. I think it's incredibly handy if you are an artist to get some industry experience, I guess, because you're able to see how things work when the artist isn't in the room, and you see the conversations that are happening, and you quite quickly identify the type of people you want to work with and your priorities that you would have if this was your project. And I think like that has stood to me just absolutely immensely. I mean, I worked, at Young Turks, I was assisting with management stuff as well, because it's a management company as well. And just learning stuff about like, managing acts the size of FKA Twigs or something is like a totally different, it's a whole different realm, and it's amazing.
Yeah. And you're, hopefully one day going to be up alongside those kind of echelons.
Yes.
Why limit yourself?
Yeah, exactly. We'll go with that.
Has doing it from London made a difference though?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I hate that I feel like this, but I do think that when it comes to trying to get music industry experience, When you're trying to establish yourself at the very kind of starting point, I think that you kind of have to move to bigger cities. Unfortunately, like I wish I could get the experience that I've gotten in Dublin. I lived in Belfast before I moved to London, and you get really good DIY experience, and you get really good just ideas of like, I want to do this thing, so now I'm going to make it happen. But there's no finance backing anything.
Yeah.
And there's only so big the scale can go, when you're trying to run things. So for me, it was important for me to move over here, so that hopefully in future I can go back to Ireland, but actually have somewhat of a career by the time I go back. I really hope that changes about the music industry, and I know that it takes people staying in Ireland for that to happen.
Yeah.
But in my head, I just want to get loads of experience, a career, and then go back.
Yeah, like the industry here is very small, like
tiny.
Like, and I don't think people necessarily have a comprehension of that, but just how small it is.
No, it's so small.
And the room to grow and to, I guess, kind of root yourself in one aspect, and to then kind of bring other people in. That's a very limited thing you can do with the amount of people and the amount of even acts and stuff like that, and venues that you'd have here. So to do it in London and to get a footing over in London is huge.
Yeah, no, it is really good. I mean, the downside to being, there's so many upsides to being from somewhere like Dublin, where like the scene is really small, but that means that everybody's really, really supportive. Like I find the scene in London way less supportive, because there's actually like some sense of competition, I guess. Whereas in Dublin, everybody just wants to support each other the whole time. And I love it. I mean, that's what's great. That's what I grew up with. I think it's a shame though that there's such a small level of like basic things like job security in Dublin. I think that's really hard on people's mental health as well, and it's really hard to have like a healthy life when you are working on like short-term publicly funded contracts where you constantly have to justify why you deserve to have a 20-hour-a-week role for the next 6 weeks.
Yay, Ireland.
Yeah, I love it. I can't wait to go back. But yeah, I think that some pretty big changes are going to have to happen. And there's people doing amazing work in Ireland to try and make those changes happen. But like I'm hopeful for the future. I would love to like have Tool based out of Dublin. That would be ideal. I mean, I don't want to deal with Brexit over here.
Who does? I don't want to deal with Brexit here, and it's somewhere here we are. And listen, Constance, I'm out of time. I have to go and do other stuff. It's okay. It's totally my bad. I should have called earlier. But thank you so much for taking time out to speak to us. Oíche is out on the 7th of May, and Tool, the label, is something to look out for as well. Loads of brilliant acts coming your way too. Constance Keane, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.